The penthouse on Park Avenue was worth $50 million, but the secret it held was worthless. Sophie Redmond was 5 months pregnant, married to a man who controlled empires. But when a late-night argument turned violent, it wasn't a fist that struck her. It was a 900-page hardcover book. Her husband, millionaire Grant Redmond, threw it like a weapon. As Sophie collapsed, clutching her stomach, she made one call. Not to the police, but to her father. The one man Grant couldn't buy, bully or silence. Dr. Robert Walker, the city's top neurologist. The game of power, lies, and money had just been checkmated by a medical file. The marble floors of the penthouse were always cold. Even in July, with the humid Manhattan heat pressing against the floor-to-ceiling windows, the polished stone chilled Sophie Redmond's bare feet. It was a cold that seeped into her bones, a constant reminder of the home's perfect, sterile emptiness. The apartment, sprawling across the entire 70th floor, was a monument to her husband's success. Grant Redmond hadn't just bought a home. He had conquered a view, owning the sky above Central Park. Everything in it was hard. The glass-topped tables, the angular steel sculptures, the sharp, minimalist lines of the European furniture. There was nothing soft, nothing comforting. Nothing except the small, insistent flutter deep within her belly. Sophie, at 26, was 5 months pregnant. The new life inside her was the only warmth she'd felt in years. She was tracing the rim of a water glass, her other hand resting protectively on her bump, when Grant entered the study. He didn't walk. He advanced. At 42, Grant was a man carved from ambition. His suits were tailored armor, his voice a tool for command. Tonight, the armor was dented. His tie was loosened, a rare sign of disorder, and his face was tight with a familiar, dangerous energy. "The Fletcher deal is stalled," he snapped, not as a greeting, but as an accusation. He began pacing the length of the vast, 2-story library, the shelves filled with books he owned, but never read. "Oh, Grant, I'm sorry," Sophie said, her voice soft, practiced. She knew this script. "Martin Fletcher is he's difficult. You've handled him before." "He's not difficult. He's a vulture," Grant spat. He stopped at the mahogany desk and slammed his briefcase down. The sound echoed in the cavernous room. "And you were supposed to have dinner with his wife, Janet. Tonight. Where were you?" Sophie's blood ran colder than the marble. She had forgotten. The nausea, the fatigue, the fog of early pregnancy. It had slipped her mind entirely. "Grant, I wasn't feeling well. The baby." He turned, his eyes narrowing. "The baby. Right. Is that your excuse for everything now? For incompetence?" That dinner was leverage. It was a simple task, Sophie. Keep the wife happy. Make her feel important. You couldn't even do that. It wasn't, "I just forgot. I can call her. I'll apologize," Sophie stammered, standing up. The movement felt too fast. "Don't bother. She already called me, wondering where my charming wife was. You made me look like an idiot. You made me look weak. I'm pregnant, Grant. I'm not incompetent, I'm just tired." Her voice rose. A mistake. She knew it was a mistake before the words even left her mouth. Grant's face, which could be so devastatingly charming for the media, twisted into a mask of contempt. "Tired? You live in a $50 million penthouse. You have a staff. You have one job, to not embarrass me, and you are failing." He stalked over to her. She flinched, pressing herself back against the desk. He saw the fear, and it seemed to fuel him. "Don't," he whispered. "Don't you dare pull that fragile flower routine with me. I built this. I built you. You were a gallery assistant when I found you. You had nothing." "That's not true," she cried, tears welling. "I had a life. I had my father." Your father, Grant scoffed. The self-important academic. Thinks his medical degree makes him royalty. He never approved of me, did he? Thought I was just new money. He just wanted me to be happy. Are you not happy? Grant roared, spreading his arms wide. Look at this. Is this not happiness? Or are you just ungrateful? This isn't happiness, Grant. This is control. You control where I go, who I see, what I wear. I'm a prisoner here. The admission hung in the air, heavy and fatal. Grant's face went from red to a terrifying, placid white. His gaze drifted from her face to the heavy book on the corner of his desk. It was The Power Broker, the massive biography of Robert Moses, a book over 100 to 300 pages long, thick as a brick. A prisoner, he repeated, his voice dangerously low. He picked up the book. Grant, no. Please, Sophie whispered, her hand instinctively flying to her stomach. She didn't know his intent. Was he going to throw it at the wall? At the priceless vase behind her? He didn't hesitate. With a guttural roar of pure, unfiltered rage, he hurled the book directly at her. Sophie tried to turn, to shield her belly. She was too slow. The thick, heavy tome struck her square on the side of her head, just above the temple. The force of the impact was explosive. A starburst of white-hot pain blinded her. Her legs buckled and she crumpled to the floor, her head cracking against the cold marble she had been standing on just moments before. The silence that followed was absolute. Sophie lay on the floor, gasping. The room was spinning. A thick, coppery taste filled her mouth. She heard a ringing sound, high-pitched and distant. Grant stood frozen, his chest heaving. The book lay open on the floor, its spine broken. He looked at his hand, then at Sophie. The panic in his eyes wasn't for her. It was for himself. "Get up," he hissed. "Sophie, get up. Stop being so dramatic." She tried to push herself up, but her arm wouldn't obey. A wave of intense nausea rolled over her. I can't," she whimpered. "My head. Grant, you hurt me." "I didn't hurt you. You tripped. You fainted. You're pregnant, it happens." He was already building the alibi, his mind-altering reality. He moved to pull her up, but she flinched away from him. "Don't touch me." "Fine," he snapped, backing away. "Fine, lie there. See if I care." He walked out of the study, not to get help, but to pour himself a drink. Sophie lay on the floor, her vision tunneling. The pain in her head was a living thing, pulsing and sharp, but beneath it was a deeper, more primal terror. A dull, cramping sensation was beginning in her abdomen. She knew she couldn't stay here. He wouldn't call for help. He would let her lie there until she agreed to his version of the story. She fainted. Her hand fumbled for the smartphone in her robe pocket. Her fingers were numb, the screen blurry. She couldn't see the numbers clearly, but she didn't need to. She hit the first favorite on her contact list. It rang once, twice. "Sophie Bean, you're up late," a warm, intelligent voice answered. "Dad," she sobbed, the word choked with pain and fear. "Dad, he hurt me. He threw a book. My head. And the baby. Dad, please." On the other end of the line, Dr. Robert Walker, chief of neurology at New York General, felt his entire world stop. He was 30 blocks away, in his quiet brownstone. He was already shrugging on his coat before she had even finished her sentence. "I'm coming," he said, his voice a blade of pure, cold steel. "Don't move. Lock the door if you can. And, Sophie, call 911, right now." I can't. He'll stop me." "Then I'm calling them for you," Robert said, already pulling up the address. "They'll be there in 3 minutes. I'll be there in 5. Grant Redmond was swirling the amber liquid in his glass, staring out at the glittering skyline, when the sound of the elevator dinged. Not the private elevator, but the service one. He frowned. A moment later, his housekeeper, Mrs. Davies, hurried into the living room, her face pale. "Mr. Redmond, sir. There are paramedics. And the police. They're in the lobby. They say someone called 911. Grant's glass stopped mid-air. "What?" "No one called from here. Tell them it's a mistake, a prank. They won't leave, sir. They said they have to see Mrs. Redmond." Before Grant could respond, the front door of the penthouse burst open. 2 uniformed officers entered, followed by a pair of EMTs, and behind them, a man who radiated an authority that eclipsed Grant's completely. Dr. Robert Walker was not a large man, but his presence filled the room. He had silver hair, a face that was used to delivering grave news with compassion, and eyes that, at this moment, held no compassion at all. They were the color of surgical steel. "Where is she?" Robert demanded, his voice cutting through Grant's protests. "Robert," Grant began, stepping forward, his voice shifting to one of feigned concern. "Thank God you're here. Sophie had a fainting spell. She's in the study. I was just about to." Robert walked past him, as if he were a piece of furniture. "Officers, follow me." He found Sophie exactly where she had fallen. She was conscious, but barely. Her skin was clammy, her pupils uneven. The floor around her head was clean, but a small, dark stain was blooming on the side of her silk robe. "Sophie," Robert said, his voice instantly softening as he knelt beside her. The medical professional took over. "It's Dad, don't move your neck." The EMTs moved in with a backboard and a C-collar. Grant hovered at the doorway, his face a thundercloud. "This is ridiculous," Grant boomed. "She fainted. I'm her husband. I'm telling you, she doesn't need all this. You're trespassing." Robert didn't even look at him. He pulled a penlight from his pocket and shined it into Sophie's eyes. Her left pupil was sluggish, reactive. Her right was blown. "She has a clear anisocoria," Robert said to the EMTs, his voice sharp and clinical. "Probable TBI, possible intracranial bleed. I want her at New York General, not Mount Sinai." Mount Sinai was the hospital Grant sat on the board of. "We have to take her to the nearest trauma center, sir," the EMT said. "You'll take her to NYG," Robert said, flashing his own hospital credentials. "I'm her father, her next of kin, and I'm the chief of neurology. She's not a patient at this address. She's a victim." "A victim?" Grant scoffed, finally pushing his way into the room. "A victim of what? Her own clumsiness." One of the police officers, a stern-faced detective named Nolan, finally turned to Grant. "Sir, your wife reported an assault." "She's confused," Grant yelled. "She's pregnant, hormonal. She fell. Ask her." Nolan looked at Sophie, who was being carefully strapped onto the backboard. "Mrs. Redmond? What happened?" Sophie's eyes found her father's. He gave her a single, steady nod. "It's okay. I'm here." She took a gasping breath. "He threw a book. He threw it at my head." The room went silent. Grant's face turned purple. "She's lying," he whispered, his voice shaking with rage. She's mentally unstable." "She has a GCS of 13, Robert snapped, standing up to face his son-in-law. "She's lucid. More lucid than you, apparently." He pointed to the heavy power broker book on the floor, its spine split. "Was that it? Did you throw that at my pregnant daughter?" Grant looked at the book, then at Robert, and for the first time, he realized he was not in control. "Officers," Grant said, switching tactics. "This is a domestic dispute, a misunderstanding. My father-in-law he's overreacting. He's always hated me. This is a private family matter." Detective Nolan shook his head. "Assault is not a private family matter, Mr. Redmond, and a potential traumatic brain injury makes it aggravated assault. You need to come with us. Come with you? Come with you? Do you have any idea who I am? Right now, Robert Walker said, his voice dropping to a deadly quiet. You're the man who put my daughter and my unborn grandchild in the hospital. And I'm the man who's going to document every single contusion, every subdural hematoma, and every damaged neuron. I'm going to put my name, my reputation, and my entire career on the line to see you in a courtroom. He turned to Nolan. Detective. He threw a 300-page book at her head. That is assault with a deadly weapon. I am her father, and I am a medical expert. I am pressing charges on her behalf. The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and fluorescent lights. Robert held Sophie's hand the entire time, monitoring her vital signs, speaking to her in low, calming tones. But inside the ambulance, a new, more terrifying problem was emerging. "Dad," Sophie whispered, her hand moving to her abdomen. It hurts. It's cramping. Bad." Robert's blood ran cold. He alerted the EMTs, who rerouted the call to the trauma bay, alerting the OB/GYN on call. When they burst through the doors of the ER, a full team was waiting. Dr. Lena Petrova, the head of high-risk obstetrics, met them at the gurney. "Dr. Walker," she said, her face grim. "What do we have?" "Sophie Redmond, 26, 22 weeks pregnant. Blunt force trauma to the right temporal lobe. GCS 13. She's now complaining of severe abdominal cramping and vaginal bleeding." The words vaginal bleeding cut through the chaos. They transferred Sophie to a bed. Dr. Petrova wheeled in an ultrasound machine. As Robert and the trauma team worked on Sophie's head, swabbing the gash and ordering an immediate CT scan, Dr. Petrova conducted the ultrasound. The room was filled with the frantic whoosh, whoosh, whoosh of the baby's heartbeat. It was fast. Too fast. "Sophie," Dr. Petrova said, her voice tight. "There's a pocket of fluid behind the placenta. It's consistent with a placental abruption." Sophie, already fogged by the concussion, tried to focus. What does that mean?" Robert Walker closed his eyes. He knew exactly what it meant. "It means the placenta is beginning to detach from the uterine wall," Dr. Petrova explained, her voice softening. "It was likely caused by the trauma of the impact and the fall. It's cutting off the baby's oxygen and nutrient supply, and it's causing you to bleed internally." Is he going to die?" Sophie's voice cracked. "We're going to do everything we can," Dr. Petrova said. "We need to get you stabilized. We're putting you on immediate, strict hospital bed rest. We need to stop the bleeding and monitor the fetus. But Sophie, you need to understand. This is very, very serious." Robert Walker looked at his daughter, so small and broken in the hospital bed. He looked at the frantic, snowy image on the ultrasound monitor. The rage he felt was so pure, so absolute, it was almost clarifying. Grant Redmond hadn't just assaulted his daughter. He had potentially just killed his grandchild. He turned to Detective Nolan, who had been standing quietly in the corner. "Go back to that penthouse, Detective," Robert said, his voice shaking. "Get a warrant. Seize that book. Seize the security footage from the elevators. And do not, under any circumstances, let that man leave the city." Nolan nodded. "We already have a unit sitting on him. He's not going anywhere." The booking of Grant Redmond was a masterpiece of quiet, efficient humiliation. He wasn't dragged out in cuffs. Detective Nolan and his partner, Detective Reed, allowed him to call his lawyer. They waited patiently as Grant, his voice a controlled tremor of fury, spoke to the most expensive lawyer in New York. "Diana," he said, "you need to get down to the 19th precinct, now. They're arresting me. It's Robert. He's fabricated this whole thing. Yes. Assault. It's absurd. Just fix it. Diana Vreeland arrived at the precinct before Grant even finished his paperwork. She was a woman who looked like she was carved from obsidian, sharp, dark, and impossibly expensive. She wore a severe black suit and a scent that smelled like scorched money. She didn't console Grant. She strategized. "This is a narrative war, Grant," she said in the small, grey interrogation room. "Your father-in-law is a respected neurologist. He just created a medical file that is now police evidence. We can't fight the concussion, not head-on." "So what do we do?" Grant hissed. "I'm supposed to just sit here? You're going to be arraigned in the morning. We'll post bail instantly. It's the media we have to worry about. By 6 a.m., this will be on every news site. Millionaire attacks pregnant wife." "It's poison. So, what's our story?" Grant demanded. "Our story," Diana said, tapping a perfectly manicured nail on the table, "is tragic accident, grieving father-in-law. We leak to page 6 that Sophie has been unstable during her pregnancy, hormonal, prone to fainting spells. You had an argument, yes, but you walked away. You heard a crash. You ran back to find she had fainted and tragically struck her head." "And the book?" Grant asked. She pulled it off the shelf as she fell, trying to catch her balance. "It's tragic. You're distraught. You called her father for help, and in his grief, he's lashing out, blaming you. He's vindictive. He never liked you." "That's good," Grant said, a slow reptilian smile spreading across his face. "That's very good." "It's not enough," Diana cut him off. "We need to control the household. Your staff, Mrs. Davies, Javier, the driver. They're the only other witnesses to your distraught state. I'll have a team at your building by sunrise. They will sign non-disclosure agreements, and they will be given a script. They saw nothing." Meanwhile, at New York General, Sophie was moved to a dark, private room in the high-risk maternity ward. Robert Walker had posted a private security guard outside her door. The CT scan had confirmed his fears. A mild concussion, but more alarmingly, a small subdural hematoma. A brain bleed. "It's small, Sophie," Robert explained, holding her hand. The neurologist was gone, replaced by the father. "It should resolve on its own. But the concussion is real. The headaches, the nausea, the light sensitivity, that's all part of it. You just have to rest." "The baby," she whispered, her eyes squeezed shut against the light. "I don't care about my head. What about the baby?" "He's stable. For now," Robert said, choosing his words carefully. "Dr. Petrova has you on magnesium sulfate to prevent preterm labor. The abruption it's a grade 1. We're watching it. Every hour. The next 72 hours are critical." Sophie began to cry, silent, racking sobs that shook the bed. "I was so stupid. I provoked him. I called him a jailer." Robert's face hardened. "Sophie, listen to me. You are not stupid. You are not responsible. You are a victim of a violent crime. His anger is his, not yours. You didn't provoke him any more than a bank provokes a robber. He is a predator, and you were his target. That ends. Tonight." The next morning, just as Diana Vreeland had predicted, the story exploded. Redmond's rage, billionaire's pregnant wife in ICU. Park Avenue assault, Grant Redmond arrested. The stock of Redmond Capital took an immediate 15% dive in pre-market trading. And the man Grant had been trying to acquire, Martin Fletcher, released a public statement. "We at Fletcher Industries are disturbed by the personal allegations against Mr. Redmond. We believe character and integrity are paramount in business. We are re-evaluating our position regarding the acquisition." The deal was dead. In his holding cell, waiting for arraignment, Grant Redmond saw the headline on the guard's television. He saw the Fletcher statement. He wasn't just losing his wife. He was losing his empire. The rage he'd felt the night before was nothing compared to the cold, bottomless fury he felt now. Sophie was resting, sedated, when her best friend, Lucy Pham, arrived. Lucy, a fiery legal aid lawyer, bypassed the security guard by claiming to be Sophie's attorney. She burst into the room, her face a mask of horror. "Soph," she whispered, rushing to the bedside. I just saw the news." "My God, is the baby?" We're stable," Sophie whispered. "Lucy, you can't be here. He'll come after you." "Let him," Lucy spat. "I'm your lawyer now. Forget that guard outside. I'm filing an emergency restraining order. Full stay away by the end of the day." "Lucy," Sophie hesitated. There's a problem." "What problem?" "The police. They interviewed Mrs. Davies, our housekeeper. She was in the hall. She must have seen it." "That's not a problem, Soph. That's a miracle. She's your witness." Sophie shook her head, the movement sending a spike of pain behind her eyes. "No, I saw her face. When he was shouting. She was terrified. Diana Vreeland, his lawyer, she's probably already gotten to her. Mrs. Davies has a son. He's sick. Grant has been paying for his treatment. Experimental. Very expensive. She'll lie for him. She has to." Lucy's face fell. "So it's your word against his?" "No," Sophie said, her eyes drifting to her father, who was sleeping in the recliner in the corner. "It's my word, and my neurologist's." The first volley in Diana Vreeland's campaign was a masterpiece of character assassination. Within 48 hours of Grant's release on a $2 million bond, a sympathetic insider story appeared in a major tabloid. A husband's heartbreak, the truth about the Redmond assault. The article painted a tragic picture. Sophie Redmond, battling severe prenatal depression, had been erratic and unstable for months. It detailed a history of hysterical episodes, culminating in a tragic fall. Grant, the devoted husband, had been desperately trying to get her help. And Dr. Robert Walker. He was a grieving, controlling father, unable to accept his daughter's mental health crisis, who was using his medical credentials to railroad his son-in-law. In her hospital room, Sophie read the article on Lucy's phone. "Hysterical?" she whispered, the word stinging more than the gash on her temple. They're saying I'm crazy. It's classic gaslight, obstruct, project," Lucy said, her voice tight with anger. "They're trying to discredit you before you can even speak. This is what Diana Vreeland does. She destroys victims." "It's working," Sophie murmured. "The comments, they're awful. Gold digger. Psycho. She probably hit herself." Robert Walker entered the room, his face grim. He'd seen the article. "Turn that off. That is noise. We will fight with facts." "What facts, Dad?" Sophie cried, the stress threatening the fragile piece of the bed rest. "It's my word against his. And he has more money." "He doesn't have more truth," Robert said. "The DA's office is taking this very seriously. The fainting story doesn't hold up. Your injuries are inconsistent with a simple fall. The location of the hematoma, the force required, it all points to a high-velocity impact, like a projectile, like a 1,300-page book. But they'll say you fabricated the report." "Let them," Robert said. "I'm not the only doctor who has seen you. Dr. Petrova has documented the placental abruption as a direct result of blunt force trauma. The entire trauma team has signed off on the TBI diagnosis. He's not just fighting me. He's fighting the entire New York General Hospital. But Grant was fighting dirty. The next day, a massive, ostentatious floral arrangement arrived at the hospital. It was a 3-foot-tall monstrosity of white lilies, the same cold, sterile flowers that filled the penthouse. The card was attached to a velvet box. Sophie's security guard brought it in. Sophie's hands trembled as she opened the box. Inside was a diamond tennis bracelet, worth at least $100,000. The card read, "My darling Sophie, this nightmare has gone on long enough. I am lost without you. Come home. Let's be a family. All my love, G." He's trying to buy me," Sophie whispered, disgusted. The smell of the lilies filled the room, making her nauseous. "It's not a gift," Lucy said, picking up the box with 2 fingers. "It's a threat. It's come home or else. He's violating the restraining order." "Technically he's not," Robert said, his voice clipped. "He sent it via a third party. It's not a direct contact. It's a power play, a reminder that he can still reach you." When Sophie refused the gift, the tactic changed. The next day, a different kind of messenger arrived, a legal courier. He served Sophie with papers. Grant was countersuing. He was suing Dr. Robert Walker for defamation, slander, and tortious interference in his marriage. He was petitioning for emergency custody of the unborn child, claiming the mother was mentally unfit and being unduly influenced by a hostile third party, Robert. This time, Sophie broke. The what-ifs were too much. "He'll take my baby," she sobbed. He'll win. He'll tell the world I'm crazy, and he'll take my son." Dr. Petrova burst into the room, her face furious. Sophie's blood pressure had spiked dangerously, and the baby's heart rate was decelerating. "Everyone out!" she commanded. "Lawyers, fathers, everyone! You are putting this baby's life at risk." As Robert and Lucy were ushered out, Lucy turned to Robert. "He's strangling her. From a distance. We need something. We need someone." Robert's face was etched with a terrible resolve. "I know. We're fighting his money and his lies. We need to find a truth he can't spin." "What truth? Mrs. Davies won't talk. She's compromised." "Maybe," Robert said, his eyes distant. "But I was a neurologist long before I was a father-in-law. I know how to find what's hidden." He pulled out his phone and made a call, not to a lawyer, but to a name from his past. "Milo? It's Robert Walker. Yes, it's been a long time. I have a problem. It's about my daughter. I need you to find a ghost." Milo Kovich was the man hospitals and law firms called when a problem couldn't be solved, only buried, or, in this case, excavated. He was a former investigative journalist turned high-priced private investigator, a man who lived in the digital shadows. He owed Robert Walker a favor, a big one. Years ago, Dr. Walker's expert testimony in a complex TBI case had saved Milo's own daughter from a lifetime of medical debt after a hit and run. "Grant Redmond," Milo said over the phone, his voice a gravelly rasp. "I know the name. Everyone knows it this week. What am I looking for?" "Anything," Robert said, pacing the hospital corridor. "He's fighting us with a hysterical woman narrative. His lawyers are the best. They're leaking stories about my past malpractice suits, all of which were frivolous and dismissed. But they make me look greedy. They're painting me as a puppet master. I need leverage. I need to know who Grant Redmond really is." "You think he's not?" "I've known him for 3 years," Robert said. "He's a black box. No family, no old friends. He appeared on Wall Street 10 years ago with a small fortune and turned it into a large one. His entire history seems curated. Find the cracks, Milo." Milo found the first crack in 36 hours. "He's drowning," Milo reported back. "The Redmond public story is a lie. He's not just a millionaire. He's a house of cards. That Fletcher acquisition wasn't an expansion, it was a desperate. He was using the merger to absorb Fletcher's assets and cover his own catastrophic losses. His leverage to the tune of 9 figures. The deal collapsing didn't just hurt him, it bankrupted him. Robert processed this. So the stress, the rage, it was desperation. Exactly. He wasn't just mad you missed a dinner. He was furious you'd jeopardized the lifeline that was keeping him from ruin. But that's not the interesting part. Go on, Robert said. Grant Redmond was born in New York, went to boarding school in Connecticut, Columbia undergrad. Standard silver spoon story. Except, it's not. The Social Security number is real, but the life attached to it, it's thin. Too thin. No hospital records before age 18. No dental. No childhood photos. It's a pristine, manufactured identity. So, who is he? That, Milo said. Took some digging. I ran his photo through a few non-traditional databases. Got a partial match. An old juvenile arrest file from Dayton, Ohio. Sealed, of course. But sealed isn't deleted. Robert waited, his heart pounding. His name wasn't Grant Redmond, it was Gary Peterson. And at 17, he and 2 friends got into a fight with another kid over a girl. Gary, or Grant, didn't just fight. He beat the kid with a baseball bat. Put him in a coma for 3 weeks. Robert stopped breathing. My God. The kid eventually recovered. Mostly. Gary's family was rich. Local manufacturing money. They paid a fortune to settle, got the record sealed, and sent young Gary away. A year later, he reappears in Connecticut as Grant Redmond, his mother's maiden name, with a trust fund and a brand new past. He's been Grant ever since. He has a history, Robert whispered. A history of extreme, disproportionate violence. This isn't a man who lost his temper for the first time, Milo confirmed. This is a man whose temper put someone in a coma, and he's spent the last 25 years burying that fact. Robert looked through the window of Sophie's room. She was asleep, the fetal heart monitor beeping a steady, reassuring rhythm beside her. He had his fact. He had the truth that couldn't be spun. Milo, Robert said, send that file to Detective Nolan, and send it to the DA immediately, and then send a copy to Martin Fletcher's legal team, anonymously, of course. Of course, Milo rasped. This changed everything. It was no longer a domestic dispute. It was a pattern of behavior. The DA could now petition to unseal that juvenile record, to show the jury exactly who Grant Redmond or Gary Peterson really was. At the same time, Diana Vreeland was feeling the ground shift. The DA had suddenly become very aggressive. Her unstable wife narrative was being ignored. And worse, her key witness, the one she'd secured, was getting nervous. She called Mrs. Davies. You seem hesitant, Anne, Diana said, her voice smooth as venom. Just to be clear, our arrangement, Mr. Redmond's generosity regarding your son's medical care, is contingent on your full cooperation. And your memory. You saw nothing. Mrs. Redmond fainted. Is that clear? Mrs. Davies, a good woman trapped in an impossible situation, looked at the photo of her son, who was finally in remission thanks to Grant's money. Yes, ma'am, she whispered, her voice trembling. She fainted. But Diana heard the tremor. She knew a weak link when she saw one. She just didn't know that another link in the chain, Javier, the driver, had already broken. Javier had approached Detective Nolan that very morning. He'd been sitting on a piece of information, terrified. After the ambulance left, Javier told the detective, his hands shaking. Mr. Redmond called me. He was in the study. He seemed calm. Too calm. He pointed to the wall near the desk. "What about it?" Nolan pressed. "There was a dent in the plaster. A deep one, sharp-cornered. He told me to get a repair kit from the maintenance room. He said, 'Javier, I need you to fix this. Now, before the drywall sets.' And he told me to take the book, the big one, and put it back on the shelf." "Did you?" I fixed the wall, sir. But the book, I was scared. I hid it, in the pantry, behind the emergency water. It has plaster on the corner. From the wall, Nolan's eyes lit up. "Mr. Diaz, you just became the DA's favorite person. They had the history, they had the weapon, and now they had the cover-up. All they needed was the eyewitness. Dr. Robert Walker knew he was taking an incredible risk. He was violating the DA's direct instructions to avoid all contact with potential witnesses. But he wasn't a lawyer. He was a father. And he knew that Diana Vreeland's web of threats and money was stronger than a police subpoena. He found Mrs. Davies on her day off in her small, walk-up apartment in Queens. The contrast to the Park Avenue penthouse was dizzying. The apartment was filled with mismatched furniture, the smell of cooking, and photos of a smiling, bald boy. She opened the door and her face went white with panic. "Dr. Walker, you can't be here. I'm not here as a doctor, Anne. I'm not here as a part of any case. I'm here as a grandfather." He stepped inside, uninvited but not rebuffed. He looked at the pictures of her son. "How is he? Daniel, right? He's in remission," she whispered, her hands twisting in her apron. "The new treatment, it worked. Mr. Redmond, he paid for it." "He saved your son's life," Robert said, nodding. It was a fact. He wouldn't deny it. He's a generous man. He is, sir. He's complicated. But he's been good to my Daniel. And in return, he's asked you to lie for him." The statement hung in the air. Mrs. Davies burst into tears. I don't know what you mean." "Anne," Robert said, his voice gentle but firm, "I'm a neurologist. My entire life is spent understanding cause and effect. A brain bleed, a placental abruption. These things have a cause. And you saw it. You were in the hall. You heard the argument. You saw him throw that book. He'll stop the payments," she wailed, collapsing onto her small sofa. "Daniel, he needs follow-up care for 2 years. It's millions of dollars. He'll let my son die. What am I supposed to do? What would you do?" It was the question that mattered. Robert sat down across from her. "I am a doctor, Anne. I took an oath. First, do no harm. What Grant Redmond did to my daughter was harm. What he is doing to my grandchild is harm. What he is asking you to do is also harm. He is not being generous. He has taken your conscience hostage." He leaned forward. "My daughter is lying in a hospital bed. She may lose her baby, and you are the only person who can give her justice. I know what he's holding over you. So let me make you a counteroffer. I don't want money. I know. You want your son to live. So here is my promise. I am the chief of neurology at New York General. I sit on the board. I have access to the finest oncologists in the world. You come forward. You tell the truth. And I will personally guarantee Daniel's care. I will use my own money. I will use the hospital's discretionary fund. I will call in every favor I am owed. Your son's treatment will not be interrupted. I give you my oath. Not as a millionaire, but as a doctor." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "He bought your silence, Anne. Let me earn your truth." Mrs. Davies looked at the kind, tired eyes of the doctor. She saw a man who, like her, would do anything for his child. And she knew, in that moment, she could no longer be a part of the lie. I saw it, she whispered, the confession tearing out of her. I was in the hall. I heard him shouting about the Fletcher deal. She said she felt like a prisoner. He roared like an animal. He picked up that awful, heavy book, and he threw it. He threw it right at her. She didn't even see it coming. She just fell, and he just watched her. Robert closed his eyes, the confirmation a cold spike in his chest. He saw me, she continued. He saw me in the doorway. He pointed at me, and he said, "You saw her faint." It wasn't a question. It was an order. Robert picked up his phone. "Detective Nolan, I'm with Ann Davies. She's ready to make a formal statement." The trial of the people versus Grant Redmond was not just a court case. It was the most anticipated public execution in New York high society. The media had dubbed it the Penthouse Provincial, a battle of old money medical ethics versus new money brutality. Every morning, the line for the public gallery snaked around the block. Grant Redmond, stripped of his bespoke suits and boardroom armor, sat at the defense table. He looked diminished, his expensive tailoring hanging loosely on a frame, thinned by stress. He was a ghost haunting the ruins of his own life, flanked by the formidable, perpetually unruffled Diana Vreeland. Across the aisle sat Dr. Robert Walker, his face a mask of calm, clinical focus. Sophie, now heavily pregnant and under strict orders from Dr. Petrova, was not present. Her absence was a palpable void, a constant reminder of the two victims, one visible, one not. The district attorney, a sharp, methodical woman named Chen, built her case brick by undeniable brick. First came the forensics. The jury was shown Exhibit A, the 1,300-page The Power Broker, its spine shattered, its corner still bearing a faint trace of white plaster. A forensics expert presented a 3D-scanned model of the study, showing the trajectory from Grant's desk to Sophie's position. He then displayed a chilling composite. The corner of the book matched perfectly to the shape of the dent in the wall, which Javier Diaz had been ordered to repair. The expert concluded, the book, weighing 3.5 pounds and hurled at an estimated velocity of 30 miles per hour, would strike a human skull with the force of a 12-pound bowling ball dropped from a 3-story window. This was not an accident. This was a weapon. Next, Javier Diaz, the driver. He was visibly nervous, his gaze fixed anywhere but on Grant. He recounted the evening, the arrival of the police, and the cold, calm order he received after the ambulance had screamed away into the night. Mr. Redmond. He wasn't crying. He wasn't even upset, Javier said, his voice quiet. He just pointed at the new hole in the wall. He said, "Javier, fix this. Now. Not please. Not what happened. Just fix this." He told me to put the book back on the shelf. I couldn't. I hid it. It felt wrong. Then came Dr. Lena Petrova. She put the jury on the front lines of the high-risk maternity ward. She explained, in clear, devastating terms, what a placental abruption was. "Imagine the lifeline that feeds your baby," she said, her voice resonating with authority, being violently torn away from the wall. The fetus is then starved of oxygen, of blood. It is, in effect, suffocating. She displayed the ultrasound images, pointing to the dark, amorphous shape of the hematoma. The fetus is in a constant state of jeopardy. This is not a hormonal event. This is the direct, textbook result of severe blunt force trauma to the mother's abdomen, consistent with the fall she sustained after being struck. The trial's emotional crescendo, however, was Ann Davies. When she was called, she walked to the stand, a small, resolute woman in her Sunday best. She refused to look at Grant. Diana Vreeland watched her, a hawk sighting its prey. Mrs. Davies recounted the night, her voice trembling at first, then steadying with conviction. I was in the hall. I heard him. He roared like an animal. He picked up that awful heavy book, and he threw it. He threw it right at her. She didn't even see it coming. She just fell like a doll, and he just watched her. Diana Vreeland's cross-examination was a masterclass in cruelty. She stalked the space between the witness box and the jury. Mrs. Davies, you were in dire financial straits, were you not? A sick son. Mounting bills. My son. Yes, he was sick. And Mr. Redmond, my client, paid for those treatments, didn't he? He was generous. Yes. But it wasn't enough, was it? You saw an opportunity. And then Dr. Robert Walker, she sneered, gesturing to Robert. He came to your home. He offered you a deal, didn't he? Lie for me, and I'll take care of your son. He bought this testimony. Mrs. Davies looked, not at the lawyer, but at the jury. Her voice was clear, ringing with an unassailable truth. He didn't buy my testimony, ma'am. He gave me the freedom to tell the truth. She then turned, her gaze finally landing on Grant Redmond, who flinched as if struck. Mr. Redmond, he bought my silence. The courtroom was utterly still. Vreeland, for the first time, had no response. She simply said, "No further questions." Finally, Dr. Robert Walker took the stand. He was not the father. He was the expert. The DA simply put up the CT scan and let him work. With the calm precision of a professor, Robert used a laser pointer to show the jury the spiderweb of a skull fracture, the coup contre coup injury, where the brain had slammed into the front of the skull from the impact, and then rebounded, slamming into the back. "And this," he said, the red dot circling the dark pool of the subdural hematoma, "is the bleed. This is not a feint. This is not a simple fall. This is an attack. This is the signature of a high-velocity projectile. This is the result of someone throwing a 3.5-pound object at my daughter's head. The medical evidence is as clear as a fingerprint." Diana Vreeland knew her only hope was to shatter his credibility. "Dr. Walker, you hate Grant Redmond, don't you? You've always hated him." Robert met her gaze. "I am a physician, Miss Vreeland. I diagnose. I don't hate. I found Mr. Redmond's personality distasteful, but my personal feelings are irrelevant to the medical facts. You coached Ann Davies. You suborned perjury to get this man. I offered a terrified woman a lifeline. I promised a child that his medical care would not be used as a weapon of coercion. I would do it again. You wanted this, didn't you?" Vreeland pressed, her voice rising. "His downfall. You saw an opportunity to destroy the son-in-law you never wanted." Robert leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping, but carrying to every corner of the room. "What I wanted, Miss Vreeland, was to attend my daughter's baby shower. Instead, I was called to an ER to assess her brain bleed and her placental abruption. My daughter presented with a catastrophic injury. My unborn grandchild presented with a life-threatening condition. I am here to present the pathogen that caused this disease. The pathogen is Grant Redmond." The final nail was the unsealing of the Dayton, Ohio juvenile file. The story of Gary Peterson and the baseball bat destroyed Vreeland's last defense. That this was a crime of passion, a one-time terrible lapse in judgment. The DA established a 25-year pattern of sociopathic violence covered by money. That afternoon, Diana Vreeland, seeing the jury's openly hostile faces, knew she was beaten. A conviction on all counts was certain. She approached the DA with an offer. Grant Redmond, his face ashen, pleaded guilty to 2 felonies, aggravated assault and reckless endangerment of a child. At the sentencing, Sophie was there. She sat in the front row, holding her father's hand. The DA read her victim impact statement. "He gave my son a life sentence," she had written. "A life that began with trauma, jeopardy, and an emergency C-section. Whatever time the court gives Mr. Redmond, it will be less than the lifetime of fear he has given me." The judge, a woman known for her severity, looked at Grant. "You did not just lose your temper, Mr. Redmond. You used your strength, your privilege, and your wealth as weapons, first against your wife, and then against the very foundations of this justice system. You are a predator, and you are a coward." Citing the calculated cruelty of the act and the brazen attempt to corrupt witnesses, she sentenced him to the maximum, 15 years in a state penitentiary. As Grant was cuffed and led away, the sound of the metal click was the only sound in the room, louder than any gavel. 3 weeks later, Sophie Walker gave birth to a baby boy. He was 6 weeks premature and weighed only 4 pounds, but he was breathing. He had his mother's eyes, and, as Robert noted with a tearful smile, his grandfather's stubborn grip. She named him Robert Walker, Jr. The epilogue was written 6 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon. The Redmond empire was gone, seized and auctioned to satisfy a mountain of debt. The penthouse, with its cold marble floors, was now just a sterile, empty box in the sky. A crowd had gathered outside New York General. Robert Walker stood at a podium in front of a gleaming, new, state-of-the-art wing of the hospital. "As doctors," Robert said, his voice amplified over the speakers, "we take an oath, but that oath is not just for our patients. It is for our community. It is a promise to choose the difficult truth over the easy silence." In the crowd, Sophie stood, holding a healthy, cooing Robert Jr. Beside her stood Ann Davies, holding the hand of her son, Daniel, whose hair was now growing back thick and full. "This new wing," Robert continued, "is dedicated to 2 missions that have become deeply personal to me. The first floor will house our new traumatic brain injury center. The second will house our expanded pediatric oncology unit." He looked at Anne and Daniel, and then at Sophie and his grandson. "It is a wing built on a promise that we will always fight for the vulnerable, a promise that we will heal the body and in doing so heal the conscience. It is my great honor to dedicate." He and Anne pulled the cord together. The blue tarp fell away, revealing the chiseled stone. The Anne and Daniel Davies. Wing for Traumatic Brain Injury and Pediatric Oncology, funded by the Sophie Walker Foundation for Justice and Healing. It wasn't a monument to a billionaire. It was a testament to the courage of a housekeeper, the resilience of a mother, and the unbreakable oath of a father. The story of Sophie and Grant Redmond isn't just a tale of wealth and violence. It's a story about the power of truth. It proves that no amount of money can silence a fact, and no threat can break a father's promise. Sophie's prison wasn't the penthouse, it was her silence. Her father, the neurologist, didn't just diagnose her concussion. He diagnosed the crime. What do you think? Was justice truly served? What would you have done in Mrs. Davies's position? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. These real-life stories are happening every day, hidden behind closed doors. If you were moved by this story and want to hear more tales of drama, justice, and resilience, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Click that notification bell so you never miss a single story. Thank you for listening.